Unknown entrepreneur here. Today, topic is acting fast and being relentless daily. Acting fast is because if you're an analytic, which I have tendencies, you always think that there's more information. But ironically enough, if you make a really quick, concerted effort on the simple things, usually a high percentage of the time, you come up with the right solution. And if you're wrong, we can always stop loss it and change it, particularly in matters of dealing with people and matters of the heart. That works really well. People will forgive, almost like under don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, which is always a good moniker. And then the daily, being relentless daily is essentially working on everything quickly, like I said, and doing it daily. Because each of those tasks add up quickly, and in the long run, it will benefit you. I think a lot of the time that's where procrastination comes in. You always think there's a better answer or the right answer. And as I get older, I realize that, you know what, not true. I'm not saying I'm doing particle physics here, a new theory. That would be acting daily because, or being relentless daily, because those type of tasks, if you're coming up with a new theory, you notice I didn't say hypothesis. Hypothesis is something you need to prove to be a theory. That you need to be acting daily on something like that. New ideas, new techniques, new experiments, etc. How does this work in life? Well, if you're a pickup artist, you approach women every day. If you want to get married, and if you're a woman, just for example, then you get out there every day. Learn how to flirt. And quite frankly, there are lots of ways to approach guys. If you're afraid, and which really aren't approaching guys, they won't probably know it if you're careful. That's your thing. And if you're a guy, lots of ways to approach women, but not really approaching women during the day. You're in a coffee shop, in the library at line, you make some comment about things, get a conversation rolling. The conversation fades quickly, or there's disinterest. Nobody gets hurt. You might get cock blocked by headsets, etc., but that's a different story. You got to pay attention to that. In both cases, you have nothing to complain about because you tried your best. And that's why you should be measured. In an investing world, act quickly. You have a certain theory that you've tested on how to make money. Warren Buffett way of buying at extreme discounts is one example. And then when you're ready, you act, and then you watch it. He actually has a very relatively small number of positions, although not so much anymore, but at one time he did, and he just watched them very carefully. And he did work every day. I think he reads 6 hours a day. And essentially is always looking for new opportunities. You can't tell me that he wasn't looking at Coca-Cola or Wrigley's 20 years back for the opportunity. And I can't help noticing the number of times he got equity stakes in these companies where there were no equity stakes by buying their debt that was convertible and actually getting an equity stake that way. Now granted, there are certain inefficiencies in the market in the past that he was able to take advantage of, meaning when he picked up Geico, etc. That was a change in tax laws, and then tax laws and the stock market crash. So if you actually do your dig back into the early 70s on that, Geico shares went down to $2 a share, but one of the founder's sons, I believe, had a huge equity stake, and in order to avoid high tax rates, he was borrowing money against his shares for years. And then, of course, he got a margin call when the stock went down to $2, and he had to sell out. And Warren Buffett was able to pick up, I believe, 9% of the company at the time. Quote, one of his best investments. Washington Post, he'd had newspapers before, 73 stock market crash, picked up an equity stake, had no intention of managing the company. At the time, he's turned over his board seats and did very well. Not sure how he's doing now, but that was in the 70s, so I think he's got a lot of his money out in dividends and then in the meantime. So where does that leave us? It leaves us, you have to get rid of all the noise in your life, realize what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in the next 5, 10, 20 years, and list what you need to do. And act a little bit every day. You might have 1,000 decisions on some massive project, so do 5 of them today. 5 tasks. Maybe you want something as simple as a beautiful home, which, by the way, in a lot of cases, the places I really like are not so much about money, but about time. Little things like a bit of paint, some small funky artifact, and you make it home. Literally just doing a bit of gardening sometimes. So that might be your thing. Maybe you want to sell your house every 2 to 3 years in Canada. So you buy something run down, fix up most of it yourself, say an hour a day. And then 2 to 3 years you sell it. At the very least you're going to get your bump. In the meantime you get a nice place to live. It's not as efficient as what happened in the 70s and 80s here. In my neighborhood, apparently it was called paint and clean. There was some phrase for it. People were buying homes in a former working class neighborhood for $40,000, $60,000. Someone old was living there, hadn't been painted in 25 years, tore up the carpet, exposed the hardwood, fixed up the hardwood, painted the inside and the outside, sold it for $80,000. You know, there was a rising market at the time, granted, but a lot of that chunk was just more curb appeal. Some of these places had been touched for 40 years. There was a demographic change, I think. If I had to dig into it, that would be my thing. But you had to act. I met one woman who's about 60 now. She did it 4 times. And those 4 times paid for her house that her and her family live in now. I think her husband stepped in around the second one. Or boyfriend at the time. And so they were like 33, 34 years old with a fully paid for home in the city. You gotta think about that. It means you have to work far less harder in life when 32% of your income is yours and not the bank's for mortgage. Not later.